All right, certainly 92.3 FM Independent Radio. We've got about 6 minutes gone past 2 o'clock. And of course, you just listened to the Heartbeat News at 2. Up next now is the program Hitches and Voices. Happy listening.
If our world is what we make of it, then we know that our choices and decisions are what shape our society. And what we have right now is what we have given, for it's only a mirror of who we are. Sadly, the reflection isn't pretty. Staring back at us from the mirror is a broken world of social injustice, discrimination, and prejudices, especially against people with disabilities. Championing the cause to heal this split is a network for the advancement of people with visible disabilities, NAPVID. We have decided to be a voice. You too can. Join Hitches and Voices every Friday at 2 p.m. on Independent Radio 92.3. Hitches and Voices. Spot the hitch. Be a voice.
Spot the hitch, be a voice. This is how I'd like to welcome you today on the program, Hitches and Voices on Independent Radio 92.3. Yeah, in Benin City, my name is Kingsley Okoje, your usual host on this program. And don't forget that this program, Hitches and Voices, is coming to you courtesy of Network for the Advancement of People with Visible Disability, NAPVID. NAPVID is a household name when it comes to disability advocacy in Nigeria, always at the forefront of blazing the trail for disability advocacy. On Hitches and Voices, our spotlight is on anything disability and vulnerable groups in our society, and today would not be an exception. But fortunately for us today is the International Day for Democracy, and our conversation is going to center around the concept of democracy and how it affects persons with disability. So this is our conversation today, and our guest on this program today is the Communication and Media Officer from Inclusive Friends Association. And so stick around with us on this program as we give you a very jolly ride on the program today. Okay, I think we have to set the tone for today's conversation. I'd like to say that there's a word that was common. It used to be said that our democracy is a nascent democracy. But I don't think that's a common term used again by political actors. Do we say this democracy is still nascent? I'm talking about the Nigeria democratic experiment now. 1999 till date, a child that was born in 1999, by this time he's an adult, and so you would not see him as a toddler. He's a grown man already. So the excuse for that child will no longer be there again. So Nigeria has grown, Nigeria has evolved, and so persons with disability are asking the question, from 1999 to date, have we been part of this process? Has it been inclusive enough? What has past and previous government done to include persons with disability in our political journey? To set the tone for this conversation, I'd like us to take a report, and after that report, we'll be back.
With population of over 30 million in Nigeria, persons with disabilities remain the largest minority group in our country. This underscores the need to prioritize disability rights, welfare, and development in all government activities and programs. However, we are deeply concerned about the apparent disinterest and marginalization of persons with disabilities by the current government. We have carefully tracked the activities of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, his manifesto, inaugural speech, national broadcast, political appointments, as well as social welfare packages, and we observe consistent exclusion of people with disabilities in Nigeria during these 100 days in office.
Persons with disability constitute about between 10 to 15% of the national population. And if that kind of size of people is ignored or excluded, then true development of nation cannot take place. So bringing this discourse about exclusion from governance, which is where decisions are made, which is where strategies are planned, which is where resources are allocated. I mean, we have to think about it seriously, and I think this event brings that to the forefront, into the front burner, and I want government to take it very serious. I want every citizen of Nigeria to take this very serious, because that's the way to go forward as a nation.
That's the way to go forward as a nation: inclusion, access, justice for everyone. And if I understand very well, the whole concept or essence of democracy is people-centered. It's all about the people. The people take the lead. Leaders are like servants. But is that what we practice in this clime? Are persons with disabilities seen as equal citizens? Are they seen as able enough to perform? Are they seen as people who can contribute meaningfully to a nation's development? And so on the program today, we have a guest. He is, like I said, the Communication and Media Officer for Inclusive Friends Association. He'll be talking to us today on this program. And so let's see if we have him on the program today. Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, Mr. Vessels, you are on to Hitches and Voices. And like you already know, today is the International Day for Democracy. So I'd like to ask you, like I said, our nation's democracy is no longer nascent. It has grown, it has evolved. What's your take when it comes to our democratic journey and inclusiveness when it comes to persons with disability?
All right. Thank you very much for having me. So I agree with you. It's been so many years already since we got our independence, and since 1993, when we started uninterrupted democracy in Nigeria. So our democracy is not actually nascent. For me, over the years, what we have witnessed in terms of inclusive governance and inclusive democracy in Nigeria has been what I could describe as best slow incremental progress. Of course, we have made certain progress, but it has actually been really, really slow compared to being a giant of Africa. We suppose that we should be leading when it comes to inclusive democracy in Africa, but the progress has actually been slow. So that would be my first take. I could go ahead and start off with the progress that has been made over the years, especially with respect to elections. But I say this advisedly, bearing in mind that democracy is not just about periodic elections. It moves beyond that to also include governance. So the progress we have made so far in Nigeria is mostly when it comes to inclusive elections. And then there are a whole lot more to be done with respect to inclusive governance, where we have not made so much progress at all. But I can count some of the progress we have already made with respect to inclusive elections in Nigeria, especially regarding the recent elections, the general elections. So we've seen so much incremental progress in this regard when it comes to data, because if it comes to disability accountability, data is actually very imperative, because you can only actually cater to the needs of people whom you can identify and whom you know. And data, inclusive data, is actually a very big challenge in Nigeria. But for the first time in our electoral democracy, or in our democracy per se, INEC was able to have disaggregated data on PWD voters. So we saw that we have over 85,000 persons with disabilities who were registered to actually vote. And for the first time, we also have quite a good number of PWD candidates. About 36 PWD candidates actually contested in the last general elections, even though none of them won, which is also a big challenge of its own. So these are some of the progress we have made. And then key to this particular progress is the Electoral Act 2022, which actually made unprecedented provisions especially the section 54, which mandates INEC to take reasonable steps to ensure that persons with disabilities are able to vote in the elections. And not forgetting the Disability Act of 2018, which section 30 provides for the inclusion of PWDs or persons with disabilities in the political life of Nigeria. So these are some of the progress we have made. And INEC went on to deploy assistive electoral materials. But again, these assistive electoral materials were not deployed in all polling units. So they were just a handful of polling units that these assistive electoral materials were deployed to. And if we could go into what actually happened on election day, it's a whole lot of...
All right. That's a very controversial area now. If we delve into that, we might not even end that conversation on the program today. But I like what you just said, that when we discuss democracy, the whole concept of democracy has to do with the electoral process and as well as governance itself. And when it comes to the electoral process, I know that IFA has been in the leading role of making sure our electoral process is inclusive. They are at the forefront of that advocacy. But let's come to participation in the political process itself. What's your take on? Are you satisfied with the level of political participation of persons with disability? Would you consider it to be their fault, or that there's a systemic problem?
Thank you. I think there is quite a structural or systemic problem, and also an attitudinal problem, which stems from the original discriminatory practices against persons with disabilities. I think that is where it all boils out from. The essence is because there are not very much. We have over 30 million persons with disabilities in Nigeria. You can imagine that. And then we have just about 85,000 of them who were registered to vote. If you match that again, 30 million.
That's a far cry.
There is something wrong. Yes,
exactly.
You see that there is something wrong. There is something really wrong. And then for the candidates themselves, we had about 36, even though this is the largest in the history of elections in Nigeria, but it doesn't really represent the number of persons with disabilities that we have. And there are a lot of factors that are responsible for this, starting from our political practice system, which is very much financially dominated. And persons with disabilities are already disadvantaged in the society because they are not very much empowered. And since the electoral process in Nigeria and politics in Nigeria is very much monetized, it deprives a lot of persons with disabilities to be able to go into this system and function properly. All what persons with disabilities will eventually get are tokenism. Like, let's just give them, let's just please them. Maybe they make you a leader of the persons with disabilities in a political party. That's the best you can get. When it comes to actually bringing you out as to stand for elections, it becomes very problematic. Sometimes in the past elections, we saw that some political parties actually tried to help persons with disabilities to contest under their platform, and then especially the AC did very well. We have some persons under Labour Party, but they are not very much. But what happens during the primaries is that sometimes, even when a PWD is elected in a primary, you discover that they sideline you, telling you that you don't actually have the money.
You don't have the money and the capacity.
Yeah, that's what they used to emotionally blackmail you. Right? They emotionally blackmail you. And then you don't really have the money to run for the country, so why are you coming out?
So money plays a big role in excluding or sidelining persons with disability from participating in the political process, as well as the attitude of the various political parties.
Yes.
Mr. Festus, please hang on. The program is still Hitches and Voices on Independent Radio 92.3, and our conversation is centered around our democracy, having in mind that today is the International Day for Democracy. How, as persons with disability, how are we faring in this democratic experience, in this democratic journey? What's the story to tell? And we've been having this conversation with Mr. Festus, who is the Communication Media Officer IFA. I'd like to ask this question very quickly. If you take a look at our political landscape, something is happening recently. It seems as if the women group, youth participation in politics, that advocacy is gaining some momentum. So what you see is that in certain appointments, like at the federal and even at the state level, they try to give women some representation. They try to give young people some representation. But nothing seems to be happening when it comes to disability inclusion. What are we doing wrong? Is it that our advocacy is not loud enough, or they are not just looking our way?
I appreciate your question. I think it's not about advocacy, because we have a lot of people talking, but sometimes it's about maybe the political will to effect certain change or even to implement existing law, because we have this problem with implementation of laws. That has always been our problem in Nigeria. We don't lack laws in Nigeria. We have laws virtually for everything. But it's about implementation. It is always in the implementation that we have problems. And it also stems to what we are seeing in the political landscape. You mentioned about youth participation. Of course, there are a lot of factors that gave rise to a lot of excitement from the youth with respect to the last elections. And we saw a lot of registration from them and even involvement in the electoral process. But then there is a fundamental question. What exactly do we know about the participation of young persons with disabilities in our elections? We don't know anything about it, because young persons with disabilities are lumped up in the larger group of young people. Yes, they are lumped up in the larger group of young people, and we already know that these young people are facing marginalization in the political space. So imagine the double jeopardy the young persons with disabilities are actually facing. Because if you look at even from if you look at the appointment that has been given, how many young persons with disabilities have been given appointments in government? Right. That's a very big question. Or even if you look at INEC ambassadors, let's even take INEC ambassadors generally. How many young persons with disabilities will you find as INEC ambassadors? Or even a person with disability at all as INEC ambassador? So it starts from there. All these little things goes to show, because if we tend to neglect, like I said from the beginning, we have to understand the accountability process before you can provide for what these people need. So there is a great gap in data. There is a great gap in data. So we don't really understand the needs, because this is very important. Young persons with disabilities are about half of the persons with disabilities in Nigeria. That is about 15 million, because a lot of persons with disabilities in Nigeria are older people. Right, yes, they are older people from 16 years and above. And it is possible that the political and the electoral needs of these people may not actually be the same.
So the fact that we are persons with disability, we shouldn't, just put everything together and think that our needs are the same or our aspirations are the same. You're trying to make a distinction now.
Exactly. You have to disaggregate. It is the disaggregation that helps you to provide for the peculiar needs and even understand the political behavior of these people.
All right. Because of time, let me ask this very quickly. There are countries in Africa that has made it mandatory by way of parliament or legislation to say, look, you must have reserved seats in parliament for persons with disability. Taking into cognizance some of the things you've said, finance plays a big role, attitudinal discrimination. So let's go back to the law. Let's make it mandatory. Let it become something that you have no choice but to create that the enabling environment for persons with disability to be part of the system. What's your take on that?
Yes, I agree with you. Positive discrimination and affirmative action when it comes to persons with disabilities is actually something we need at this time, because it will help to speed up the closure of the gap in political participation. So it is something that politicians, it is something that stakeholders should be willing to consider and see how we can reserve seats for persons with disabilities and also for women, in the society who are much more politically marginalized.
Media Communication Officer, Inclusive Friends Association, Festus.
Communications Legal Officer.
Communication Media Officer. It's been very, 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 impactful having you on the program today. Our delight. We want to say a very big thank you to you. All right, that's it on the program today, Hitches and Voices. I hope you had a fun time with us on the program today and you've learned, or there's something for you to take away. I mean, democracy, like I said, is about the people. When some people feel left behind, democracy is not seen to be inclusive. I like to say you can go to our various social media platform, www.facebook.com/NABIDNigeria. Interact and interface with us there. Twitter and Instagram is @NABIDNigeria. Give us that call on 09136073671, or you could take a stroll or come to visit us at our secretariat in case you are curious, you want to know what this organization is all about, or you want to be part of what we do, you want to support us, you want to be a volunteer with NABID. Like I always say, NABID is not just open to persons with disability. We have so many members, volunteers, who do not have any form of disability but believe in the struggle and want to create a world that is, conducive for everybody. My name is Kingsley Okoje. I'll do this with you, same time, same station. Till then, always look out for the hitches and be a voice.
If our world is what we make of it, then we know that our choices and decisions are what shape our society. And what we have right now is what we have given, for it's only a mirror of who we are. Sadly, the reflection isn't pretty. Staring back at us from the mirror is a broken world of social injustice, discrimination, and prejudices, especially against people with disabilities. Championing the course to heal this split is a network for the advancement of people with visible disabilities, NAPVID. We have decided to be a voice. You too